Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's start the class with the mantras. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Om Bhu Bhava Swaha, Tatsavitra Varenyam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Nah Prachodaya. Asto Ma Satgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, Mrityorma Amritam Gamya. Om Sahna Bhavatu, Sahna Punatu, Saviryam Karvavahi, Tejasvi Navadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahi. Om Shanti 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 Om. Kathopanishad. We ended our class with verse number 4. And this is a first section or the first chapter of the second section. Okay. So different books, they divide it a little differently. So, but this is definitely a fourth section. Okay. And Lord of Death is talking about the Atma, the soul, because this is what that young boy Nachiketa wanted to know. So he said, he by whom the end of dream as well as waking is perceived, that all pervading great self, I am. So that means we can't even know anything in the waking condition or in the dream condition or deep sleep also without the help of who we are, Atma, the soul. That's what he says, I am. Knowing this, the wise grieves not. So I am that. I am a part of God. I am Brahm, eternal, pure, all-knowing. What is there to grieve? So he says, knowing this, the wise grieves not. Okay, this is where we ended our last week's class. Let's start with verse number 5 today. Ya imam madvadam ved atmanam jivam antikat ईशानाम भूत भव्यस्य न ततः विजुक्ते एतत् वै tat. Ya means who? Imam, this. Madhvadam, the enjoyer of honey. Madhu means honey. Enjoyer of honey. Ved knows. Atmanam, this Atma. Jivam, sustainer of life. Antikat, very near. Ishanam, the Lord. Bhut bhavyasya, of the past and the future. Bhut is the past, bhavyasya, future. Na means not, tataha, thereafter. Vi jugupste, he fears. Etat, this is, way, verily, that means that. He who knows this Atma, the enjoyer of honey, the sustainer of life, and the Lord of the past and the future, is very near. Okay, so like this, very near, closest than the closest. He fears no more after that. This is verily that. First of all, this word madhu or madhvadam, the enjoyer of honey. Honey here stands for the good fruits of meritorious acts. Madhu. So our jeev, the egocentric personality of ours, performed the actions. When the good actions are performed, we enjoy them. The Atma, pure consciousness, is said to be here the eater of honey. He is the enjoyer of all the good luck that accrues to us as a result of noble acts. And what are those acts? Acts of kindness, mercy, love, those kind of actions. But if you remember, philosophically speaking, Atma is not the enjoyer. Atma is not the doer. So we really cannot take it literally. Otherwise, it goes against that philosophical truth. Because Atma is neither the enjoyer nor a doer. So what is Lord of Death is saying over here? He's saying only in its conditioned aspect. Okay. So not the Shuddha Buddha Atma, but in the conditioned aspect, it does. We do say that it hurts my Atma, or my Atma is enjoyed. If Atma is in that allegory which he gave few verses ago, chariot, and the owner of the chariot is sitting in the back, that is the Atma. If the chariot goes into the ditch, owner goes into the ditch too. So in that sense, conditioned sense, when it's attached, at that time it's called Jeev Atma. Okay? So do not get confused with these statements. Just try to understand it in its deeper implication. Atma, as conditioned by the mind, by the intellect, and the body, is what really actually meant here. Okay? So one who realizes his Atma, he does not fear anymore. Because fear is always wherever there is a rag, wherever there is an attachment. See, bhai and krodh, they coexist with the rag. So when there's no rag, there's no fear. So a perfected soul, a wise person, has reached the state of desirelessness, and he has no more attachments with any particular objects of the world, and naturally there cannot be in him any sense of fear. So this is what this word vijupste, na tataha vijupste. Okay, so he has no attachment even with his own body. He is perfectly above all bodily consciousness. And he says, this verily is that Brahma which you have asked for. Okay. So the knower escapes all fears. And if you look at our fears, what are they about? About this body, about the attachments to this worldly objects or people or situations. Okay. So this is a person who has risen above it, no more fear. Ye purvam tapsaha jatam adbhya purvam ajayat guham parvishye tishtantam ye bhute bhi vyapashyat etat vaitat. So in all these verses, they end with etat vaitat because he's trying to explain what the Atma is. Ye means who? Purvam, in the beginning. Tapsaha, tap, austerity. And austerity done by who? Brahma, Purvam. Jatam was born. Adbhya Purvam, before the waters. And waters over here means all those 5 elements. In order to create all those 5 elements, Brahma had to do a lot of austerities. Tap. Ajayat was born. Guham, cave of heart. Parvishye, having entered. Tishtantam, he who dwells. Ya means who? Bhute bhi, within the 5 elements. That means the body. Vyapashyat, beholds or realizes. Etat, this is, where verily, tat, that. He who was born of tap of Brahma in the beginning and born even prior to the five elements, water, etc. What are those five? Water, fire. You remember that? So earth, water, fire, air, and space. That's what he meant by five. From consciousness, who beholds the firstborn. And what is the firstborn? Hiranyagarbha. Who entered the cave of the heart and dwells within the great elements. This is verily that which you have asked for.
Just 1 second.
See, each Upanishad explains to us in its own style the method of this process of creation. So over here, Lord of Death is trying to tell us that sure, Brahma wanted to create. In order to create, he had to do tapasya. From the tapasya, Hiranyagarbha came. All those elements came. This creation became, but even before that, what was that? The Atma was already there. Nobody created the Atma. Creation is only the manifested world. Creation is the creation of the Prakriti because it goes into the unmanifested, and in order to bring it into the manifestation, tapasya is needed. And even Brahma did that tapasya. But Atma was there even before that. There's no creation of the Atma. So it's not that tapasya was done and Atma was created. No. See, listen to this again. He who was born of tap of Brahma in the beginning and born prior to five elements from consciousness, who beholds the firstborn, Hiranyagarbha, who entered the cave of heart and dwells within the five great elements, there verily sees, this is verily that Brahma which you have asked for. So these rishis, the yogis, they knew in their wisdom that in this manifested world of names and forms, there's a delusion created by the human mind. This world, the manifested world, has only as much reality as our dreams have. See, when we are dreaming, we know that, we know for sure that it's true. But the minute we wake up, we know it was just a dream. No matter how real the dream felt like, once we are awake, we know it was just a dream. That's why nightmare, we are thank God that it was just a dream, even though we got shaken up. So the rishis knew at once that to the seeker who had approached them in his early stages of world, it seems real to him. So that's why each rishi to the students, they try to explain this whole creation little differently according to the level of the students also. Because no two students are at the same temperament or same culture, same attitude, same aptitude. So that's why the writings can be little different, but the essence is the same. Because all these masters, they had to lead the students ultimately to the state of pure consciousness, towards that Atma, which is part of Paramatma or Brahma. Okay, so Atbhaya Purvam, prior to the waters, this is one of the key words in this verse. The Hiranyagarbha, which you all know is the total mind and intellect, was born prior to the five elements. Okay, so Hiranyagarbha was born before, and then came the rest of it. So there are passages in the different Upanishads where the processes of creation are explained. And this is like a supreme willed himself to many. And that's how this creation is. This theory echoes in this mantra also, it echoes in a lot of other mantras in the Vedas also. So in a summary, this mantra says that a seeker finally realizes the supreme reality, the eternal factor, both in the microcosm as well as in the macrocosm. Vyasti and Samasti. These are the two Sanskrit words for the microcosm. Microcosm means Vyasti and macrocosm Samasti. So Brahm appears as Jeev through the conditioning of Maya. So when the conditioning is dropped off, the Hiranyagarabha and Jeev, they become identical with the transcendental Brahm. And he says, this is verily that. Etat vai tat. When you drop off everything else, when you take all the layers of the onion, what do you see inside? Just an empty space. So he says, etat vai tat. When you peel off everything, that is the Brahm. Ya pranena sambhavati aditi devta me गुहाम प्रविश्य तिष्ठन्तीम य भूते भी व्यजायत एतत् वै तत्. Ya means who? Pranen, along with the pran. Sambhavati is born. Aditi, the enjoyer. Devata mein, soul of all the devatas. Guham, the cavity of the heart. Parvishya, having entered. Tishtatim, who abides therein. Ya means who? Bhute bhi, with the five elements. Vyajayat, was born. Etat vaitat, this is verily that. That Aditi, over here Aditi means Hiranyagarabha also. Because who's the enjoyer? Hiranyagarabha, mind, intellect. So that Aditi expressing as the Pran, Pran means that life force, having entered and existing as the soul of all the faculties within the body of five great elements, and as if born, this is indeed that. So it seems like it's born at that time. So that's why he used the word as if born. It's not born at that time. Soul is not born when the body is born. But it seems like that it's born at that time, as if born. So here the word pran stands. Prans and Hiranyagarabha both, it's like without the energy, the Hiranyagarabha cannot even function. They are together. That life energy is needed for the Hiranyagarabha, mind and intellect also. And the Devata means souls of the gods. Here Devata stands for presiding deities of the sense organs. Those are the Devatas. A presiding deity, that power which illuminates these sense organs. Those are the Devatas. And Pran, you're all familiar with the life essence in the perception powers of the Indriyas. Okay. So Aditi, I already told you, the one who eats, the enjoyer, sole enjoyer of the whole universe, as a macrocosmic life, or the cosmic Pran, the cosmic intelligence. See, all the joys enjoyed by every living form, that is a Hiranyagarabha, all of them together, aggregate. So that's why it's called a total mind. or the cosmic mind. He says, this is verily that Brahm which you have asked for. Aranyaho nihita jat veda garbha iv subhritaha garbhi nibhi dive dive idia jagriv dabhi havishvam dabhi manushye bhi agnihi etat vaitat. Arneo. Arne is the two pieces of wood which are used. It's like a fire sticks in the old times. They used to just rub those fire sticks to create the fire for the oven. Arne. So arneo, that means two of them. Nihita, lodged. Jat Vedaha. Jat Veda is omniscient fire. Jat Ved. Different fires, they have different names. So Jat Ved is one of the names for the fire. Okay, so omniscient. Garbha, fetus. Iv means like, subhritaha, well preserved, well nourished. Garbhinibhi, by pregnant women. Dive dive, day by day. Idia, adorable. Jagri vadbhi, by awakened person. Havisham dabi, by the sacrificial officiant for the sacrificial fire. This is called a ritvij also, the person who's performing the fire, the havan. Manushya bhi, by people. Agni, god of fire. Etat vaitat, this is verily that. He says, as the fetus is well preserved by the pregnant woman, the omniscient fire that is lodged within two pieces of wood is worshipped day after day by awakened men and by the sacrificial offerings. This is indeed that. Okay. So in other words, the wise people see the Atma, the God, the Brahma, even in that fire, or even the act of creating the fire also. They see that power in there. Okay. So the same Brahma who is worshipped by sages in the heart through meditation is worshipped by the householders as Agni through sacrifices also. It's just like by all these rituals, try to see God in everything, every actions of ours, every thought of ours. So he's just giving us a little example that how carefully the priest rubs those two pieces of wood, because fire is already there. It's not that fire is brought from somewhere else. Fire is lodged in those pieces of wood. Just a little action of ours, it ignites it. Okay, the fire when once lit is never allowed to die off. Even when we do the havan these days, we don't rub two pieces of wood, but we have the either the lighters or the matchsticks. But once it's lit, we are very careful. The priest who's doing the havan, the ritvij, they make sure that fire stays lit until the conclusion of the havan. When we do that Puranahuti, the total, the final oblations when we stand up, we make sure that it stays lit. And by giving over here, Garbha ev subhrita garbhi nibhi, that means he says the motherly tenderness, devotion, and care. Motherly. That's how that Ritvik preserves that fire, just like a mother preserves the fetus. So this is like a comparing these two acts. So fetus preserved in the womb of a pregnant woman, and the fire preserved in that Havalkund. So then he says, seekers worshipped the Supreme through meditation upon the significances of the Om, the same way the householders worship the same reality in that fire. So when we meditate, it's the same kind of that Om, whether it's a sound of the Om or the realization of the Om or the connection with the Brahma, with the same kind of alertness, tenderness, kindness, we have to keep that connection. We don't want that connection to go away. So this is what he's trying to tell us over here. When he says, Dive dive idyaha jagri, jagri vadbhi havisham dabi. So wise people do that. So whether it's an outer ritual or whether it's an inner ritual, the same kind of a care is needed. Because worship is an act in the gross plane of our sense objects. Definitely it needs some prop. But the same thing we need some kind of a prop when we do the meditation. The sound of Om, symbol of Om. Okay, there could be a sound, there could be a vibration, or there could be a fire outside, or there could be any kind of a form of a deity. That to ultimately see that as Brahma and keep the connection with that. So names and forms in Om and the fire, when we remove all those names and the forms, what is remained? Brahma. This is what he's saying. Etatvai tat. So all these names and forms, all these vibrations, all these frequencies, they help us to see what is embedded in there, which is Atma or Brahma. Okay? And he says, this is what you asked for, and this is what I'm telling you. Etatvaita. Yataha cha udeti suryaha astam gachanti yatra cha. Tam devaha sarve arpitaha tat una kanchan ateti etatvaita. Yata, from which? Cha means and. Udeti, rises. Surya, the sun. Astam gachati, that means merges, goes down. Yatra, into. Cha means and. Tam, in that. Devaha, gods. Sarve, all. Arpita, are fixed or depend. Tat, in that. Oh, verily. Na kaschan, none. Atyeti, goes beyond. Etat means this, ve means verily, tat means that. This is verily that. And that from which the sun rises, and into which it merges. On that, all the devatas depend upon. And no one goes beyond. That means there's nothing beyond that. This is indeed that. Over here, all the finite things have been observed because they all have the beginning and the end. Transient beings are born, and everything which is born must necessarily die also after a period of time. For some, the period of time is longer than the others, but they must die. Anything which is born must die. Even the modern astronomers, they have the same conclusion. They say even the sun and the moon and the stars, including the globe of ours, all things are born. And they will all at different periods of time disappear also. So over here, the word sun is a representative noun when he says sun. So that means entire finite things or finite objects. That's what it really means. But when we look at the eternal absolute, the state of pure existence, that is infinite. That's not finite. But the devas, the five fundamental elements, they are finite. Why are they called devas? Because they are considered as the presiding deities of the five sense organs. Just like eyes cannot see without light. That light is the deva. So this mantra declares that all the five great elements depend entirely upon the Supreme Self. Okay. So this is the truth, which is the substratum for the fundamental elements. And this is what you asked for. You said this is that. Okay. So that from which the sun rises and into which it merges, on that all the devtas depend, and no one goes beyond. So there's nothing beyond Brahma, nothing beyond Atma. And this is indeed that. Next one, he says in verse number 10, Yat ev ih tat amutra, yat amutra tat anu ih. Mrityos mrityum apnoti, ya ih nana iv pashyati. Yat means what? Ev means indeed. Tat means that. Amutra, there. Yat, what is? Amutra, there. Tat anu, the same according to that. Ih is here. Mrityo, from death. Sa means he, mrityum to death. Apnoti means proceeds. Ya means who? Ih means here. Nana iv as different. Pashyati beholds. What is indeed here? Visible as the word. Okay, so in this world, whatever is visible, what is indeed here, the same is there. Invisible as Brahma. And what is there, the same is here. These exact words, my own Gurudev Ji uttered when he was leaving this body. Exact same words. What is indeed here, the same is there. And what is there, same is here. To the realized saint, in his transcendental vision, whatever is here, that is there. What is there, same is here. So when he was leaving his body, he was not afraid to leave the body, but he was giving us this the very clear picture, even at that time. Even though he recited and even created many mantras too in his writings, but in the last moments, in that particular body, these are the words. He proceeds from death to death, who beholds here difference. So that's why I said the transcendental saint sees the same, but we don't see the same. That's why we keep coming here again and again. And this is what Yamaraj is saying. He proceeds from death to death, who beholds here difference between Brahma and the world. There's no difference between Brahma and the world. It's It's only the way we perceive it. Just like all the different waves are nothing but the ocean. They are not different than the ocean. They are ocean alone. Right? You will agree with that. Waves come, where do they go? They are part of the ocean. The same way we are part of the same Brahma. So the mantra is very kindly explaining to us that in fact there's no difference between the supreme reality and the essential reality behind the world of the delusory names and forms. And why are we are fighting over these forms? Why do we have the fears? Why do we have the attachments? Why the anger? Why the jealousy? Rise above all these. Where there's no truth, there cannot be a manifested world of objects. What we see behind all the seeming delusions is the eternal, all-pervading truth. We see it differently. Actually, it's only one. It's almost like when we are watching something on a screen. On the screen, there could be a tragedy in that movie. There could be a comedy. It could be a musical. But all of that is where? On that screen. Without screen, you cannot see any of it. The same thing. What is that substratum? That is Brahma. Okay? If there's no screen, there's no story. So when we see the stories, it's because of the Brahma, because of the substratum. So the knower of this self, after his supreme moments of life, that means the moment of the illumination, cannot visualize the world without this dynamic awareness of the truth. He is the knower. He knows what governs it, what supports it. And that governing factor and the supporting factor is nothing but me. And that's why I said, he's a wise person. He knows it. And we all need to know that too. So anybody who has come to experience the state of oneness is the state of godhood, actually. State of godhood. This kind of a person can never slip back. Okay? If we have not reached there, sure, we can slip back. But once you have experienced it, you cannot slip back to this endless wheel of sansaric or the worldly pains and continue the agonizing lives between the repeated birth and deaths. And this is what he is saying over here. The Lord of Death. He says, he proceeds from death to death who beholds here difference. And who doesn't see this difference doesn't have to suffer. To me, this is a beautiful verse for more than one reason. As I said earlier, let's do one more. Then I know you have some questions. We'll go through the question answers also. Manasa eva idam aptavyam na ihinana asti kinchan mrityo samrityum gachanti yah ihinana iva pashyati. Manasa, by the mind. Ev means alone, idam means this. Aptavyam could be obtained. Na ih, not here. Nana, difference. Asti, there is. Kinchan, anything. Mrityo, from death. Sa means he, mrityum, to death. Gachti, goes. Ya means who, ih here. Nana iv, as different. Pashyati, sees. by mind alone could this means Brahma, be obtained. Obtained means realized. Okay, by mind alone could this be realized. Then there is no difference here at all. He who sees any difference here goes from death to death. Okay, so he is reiterating what he said in the previous verse. So what do we need to do? Mind we all have. We need to learn how to train this mind. We need to learn how to control and regulate the applications of this mind to minimize its activities to a zero. When the mind keeps on fluctuating from the past to the future, the longer the spectrum is, the more it fluctuates. We got to bring it narrower and narrower and narrower. And that's why I said, minimize its activities to zero. At least during our meditations, we can do that. This is called a process of mind annihilation. It is achieved with practice, with sadhana. Not just by wishing and willing, by sadhana. In fact, however great the guru may be, however powerful the scriptures may be, they cannot bring this final ending of the mind. Unless the seeker is ready and to end it himself by his own effort. I witnessed, these eyes witnessed, the ears witnessed, the guru, even towards the end of his human life, visualizing the oneness. But in order for me to see this, I have to annihilate my mind. Sure, we get the guidance, we get the motivations from a guru and the scriptures. But we got to take hold of our mind with the help of the sadhana. This is what he is trying to tell us over here. Mind, by mind alone could this be obtained. That's why that popular saying, Manev Manushyanam Karnam Bandh Moksha. And meditation is the process. Okay, meditation is the process by which the mind, soaring over the summit of spiritual inquiries, loses itself into nothingness then. Okay, that's what happens. The mind out of its own ashes rises up to a new faculty, which is called intuition. And intuition is that is what, through that's almost like an instrument. Through that instrument, ultimately, we cognize the self. So whether you call it a mind or the intuition, but ultimately, they help us to cognize ourselves. So in other words, when the mind has ended through meditation, the self has become fully aware of itself. Then there's no difference here at all. Mrityo samrityum gacchati ya nana ev pashyati. So it's like for purposes of certainty and emphasis of assertion, the Upanishad is repeating itself. Okay, so he's asserting, he's just making sure that we get it. Because sooner or later we have to face ourselves. And if we are not sure about it, if we are not smart enough to walk the path of the truth, we will not fully reach there. Reach there means achieve that goal of life in this very birth. He says, what will happen then? He says, this kind of a person who has not achieved it shall go from death to death, who sees differences here. So that choice is always here for us. Coming back again and again and again. Choice is ours. Do we want to see sameness? Do we want to reach to that level with our sadhana, where we see everything one? Or do we want to just keep on rolling in these finite names and objects? So bottom line is that all beings are in truth but the one. And the failure to experience the unity is death, according to Yamaraj. Okay, so we'll start with the verse number 12 next week. And again, he mentioned that Angushta Matra, that term comes over here in this scripture, Angushta Matra. Because how to meditate on the Atma, Angushta Matra. Okay, so let's stop it here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much. So